Okay, so now we've shown you the machine, shown you all the parts of it. What we're going to do now is show you how to flush out the system that before you put your product in. So because our machine doesn't get used every day, if we've got long periods of time, we have Rhino, our PolyLube in it. So, and then once a week we just crank them over, make sure all the machines, doesn't matter if it's the EXP2 or the E10 or even the MK15, we run them every week just to make sure. Now, so our machines sit around a lot, so at the moment I've got PolyLube in our machine, so we're going to need to empty that. So we do that through the recirc system, but you may have noticed I've got safety goggles and gloves on now because we're starting to play with chemicals now. So safety is always the most important thing that we can state. It's especially the ISO. The ISO, if it gets onto your skin, it actually draws the moisture out, and your body can actually have a reaction where build up over years, your body can't process it and you can become quite ill. So it's really important to always cover up. Long pants, make sure you've got long sleeves. If you like to wear shorts and t-shirts, just put some protective overalls on, especially when you're playing with the ISO. Even the resin, it's, you don't want to be getting on you at all, especially when it's pigmented. The pigment can get into your pores of your skin as well. Eye protection is important as well. ISO, as I mentioned, it's moisture sensitive, so if you get any ISO in your eyes, it crystallizes, and it's a very serious thing. You need to wash your eyes out for 15 minutes with water and get to medical assistance as soon as possible, because if it starts to crystallize, you're going to do serious eye damage. So make sure when you're playing with any of our Rhino chemicals, got your gloves on and safety chemicals, safety glasses on, just to make it safe. Okay, so what we got here is our machine is set up in the recirc position. Now our return lines, they actually can come out. So generally during the shutdown, I just put a bit of grease. You can use Vaso on this just to keep it lubricated, especially on the ISO side. So it's really important that you do make sure that you keep it clean, because once the ISO goes off inside the tank, around the pipe, the return pipe, you're going to have issues. So generally what we want to do is start with I always start with our ISO. So you just take out your return line and basically just on slow mode, you just want to empty the tank. Now, as you can see, you've got the product coming through at the moment. It's nice and clean, it's not murky. If you leave the ISO, if you don't flush out the ISO properly, you'll find that the PolyLube will go quite murky. In fact, it can even go jelly-like. So it's really important that when you're flushing and cleaning the machine out, that you actually make sure that it's done properly, because if you get the jelly substance, it's almost have to pull the machine apart and get it fixed. So we just keep it running out. As you can see, I've got about a litre in there at the moment, so it won't take too long to come out. So what you want to do is actually pump enough. You want to pump it the tank to be empty, and actually get an airlock in the system. So when you've got an airlock, when the ISO has gone through the hose, you'll get an air burst, and then from that on, after about a litre or so, you're going to get the ISO. And you don't want to have too much waste. Okay, so I've got an airlock at the moment. We turn the machine off, we just let everything settle down. And what you want to do is get into the habit of making sure that every time you empty the tank, you give it a wipe out. I just get a rag with a bit of acetone, just wipe it out, and then we're ready to put our product in. Okay, so I've put our product, our ISO, into our tank. So now I'm going to just put it on slow recirc. We'll still get a bit of PolyLube through. Hopefully it's still coming through. Okay. So we just want that PolyLube to come through. We'll get an airlock. Hopefully we should get a spurt. Okay, so we're getting a bit of air through, a little bit more air. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to get a bit more PolyLube, and then we'll start getting the ISO. So this is where we just get a little bit of waste. So there's still a bit more PolyLube. There's about 1.5 litres to 2 litres in the line. So yeah, we don't want to contaminate the PolyLube too much. So now you can hear the change of the motor. The ISO is a little bit thicker. So now we can hear that. We'll just put this in our waste container. So it's still clear. You can still see it clear. Now the ISO will be a honey colour when it comes out. So it's still ISO, it's still PolyLube. Okay, we're just starting to change colour now. So what we want to do is get about 1 litre of that, maybe a little bit less, until it comes out. Now you can hear the machine, and you can see, because the product is thicker, we're getting a reading on our gauges, on our ISO gauge. Okay, that should be enough. Okay, we'll just turn that off. Now we just want to let that drain. Now you always have a rag handy because this is just going to dribble for a little bit. And you can block it with your finger. Put it back into the return tube. Put it down, just give it a wipe. Okay, so basically that's our ISO done. We've flushed out the PolyLube, and now we need to do the resin side. So just with a different bucket, you don't want to use the same bucket to use with the PolyLube, because if you're changing colour, you can actually use that again. You have to flush it a couple of times. So for your first initial flush, you can use that old PolyLube and get it out, then Rhino flush, then PolyLube again, and clean PolyLube later on. So basically what we want to do the same as we did with the ISO side. Just turn it off. Okay, so we just want to get that into there. Just going to lift it up. Okay, so while we're doing this, what you want is if you've got a mini drum or a maxi drum, the plastic pails, doesn't matter, but what you want to do is get your resin stirring up. I've got that stirring up in the background. I've had it stirring for about 25 minutes or so. So while you're doing this, flushing the system out, just have it stirring. Now, if you're using the 20 litre pails, you'll just need to use a stirrer just before you pour it in. But it needs to be stirred for at least 5 minutes on a slow speed with the drill. We don't want to bring any air into the system. I'll just grab the stirrer. So this is the stirrer that we like to use in the E10, basically because it's plastic. Our tanks are actually plastic as well. So if you used a steel or an aluminium or something that's got sharp edges, you'll damage the tank. So we found that these are the best. Okay, so we've just come at the tank's just dropping down now. We'll get that airlock. Okay, so basically I've got some acetone on my rag. What we're going to do is just wipe it out. We've definitely got an airlock in there. So make sure that you wipe the whole of the tank out. Make sure you get all the PolyLube dried up. And okay, so that's basically, I'll put our product in, take me a couple of minutes, and then we'll get the heaters on and get it circling up to heat up. Okay, so I've just put in our resin. Now we're just going to pump it through like we did with the ISO. Okay, so we're just getting our air through. With the resin, when it's pigmented, it's a bit easier to see, so we can just probably hang on a bit longer. Okay, we've just got black coming through. What I'm going to do is just get rid of that. So one way you can tell if it hasn't got any PolyLube left in it, just run it on the side, and if it's black, as it hits, you usually find that PolyLube's gone. So we just let that run a bit longer. Okay. We want to try and get us, make sure we've got all the PolyLube out. It's better to have, waste a little bit more than waste the if we contaminate the product with PolyLube. Okay, just let it drain. Once again, just put your finger over it so we don't make much of a mess. Back in. Okay, put our lid on. Now with the return pipes, I like to leave them a little bit higher because as the product falls down and hits the remaining product in the tank, it sort of stirs it up a little bit more. So now we're ready to heat up. So just get the machine so we can get it circling. Okay, so we want our target to be 77. So we want to go right up. As I mentioned, it's a little bit cold today. So we'll get up to 77. And then we can turn both of our heaters on. So, okay, so we turn the first one on, the lights come on, we heard the clunk. So both lights are indicating that the heater's working. So now we just go back to what the temperature is. So we're going to leave that now. We'll take about probably half an hour, 40 minutes for it to heat up. So when we come back, we should be ready to heat it up and ready to spray.